should I do?
All right then. If you want orders, follow this one.
Pull to open.
Pull to open!
Yes, and what do you do?
I don't need to make claims. I know how good I am.
Like you don't know.
Show me.
You want to see it?
Blimey, you can smell the testosterone.
Here come the drums!
So here it comes, the sound of drums. Here come the drums, here come the drums.
Dun 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 dun.
Hello and welcome to a very special episode of Pull to Open, an ongoing quest to watch all of Doctor Who, all of the televised series in excitingly random order. My name is Chris Taylor.
And I'm Pete Paschal, and Chris and I are a couple of electrified guys this week.
Woohoo!
Now that we are back, I feel like it's a new era now that we're post Power of the Doctor.
We're post
I
Power.
haven't seen it.
Yeah, last week
Post-Power.
we were all like, let's not talk about it too much last week, and we're going to be all let's not talk about it too much this week. But we're super excited. We're super excited that we kind of got a little bit of it right ahead of time. But that's yeah. So anyway, yes, we're a couple of guys. We're a couple of journalists. We're a couple of Doctor Who travelers through time and space. And here's where we've been previously. 5 episodes ago, we were at Rosa, our first Jodie Whittaker. Our randomizer decided, rather scarily, before Power of the Doctor, to catch us up with our first ever random Jodies, which was Rosa, and then it was the Witchfinders. 3 episodes ago, we took a diversion back to Troughton for actually what is, in a way, also a new story, newly animated, Fury from the Deep. 2 episodes ago, with our special guest, Chris Burgess from Radio Free Skaro, we did Time Flight, the post-Adric Concorde story, and we looked at what happens when a companion leaves the TARDIS. And then last time we took another look at what happens when a companion leaves the TARDIS with the Runaway Bride, which is the first post-Rose episode and the first Tennant Tate episode. And we did that right before Power of the Doctor, right before we knew, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, that the new Doctor is David Tennant.
The 14th Doctor.
The
It's official.
14th Doctor. He's not 10. It's not a dream. It's not a
he's not
sideways
13B.
universe. Yep. Series 13B. No, he's the actual 14th Doctor. It's the first time it's happened, and I'm sure that was a big reason why RTD got him back, right? You know, you'd be the first Doctor in history. And, you know, we can talk about the curator, but you'll be the first official Doctor in history to be 2 numbered Doctors. You'll be 10 and 14. I don't think anyone could say no to that, right?
Right. Oh, absolutely. But all
Indeed.
of this, of course.
All of this has led us to our very first Chris Eccleston episode. Speaking of Rose from The Runaway Bride, Rose is in this. And it is, wow, what an Eccleston episode.
Right.
It may be my favorite. I think it may be Pete's favorite as well. Maybe your favorite. It's Dalek.
Yeah, huge. It's like our first episode is the most Eccleston episode that has ever Eccleston, you know?
Oh,
it's like
it's so Eccleston. It's got like Eccleston dripping off the walls of the bunker.
well, certainly off his lip at one point. But it's just a doozy. It's just crazy that the randomizer, you remember like way back when we were worried that the randomizer was taking us through too much good Doctor Who before,
Yes.
because we're not even really halfway through the entire television run yet, and we've already done so many epic episodes, and this is like definitely reputed to be one of them. We won't reveal what we think about it upon this rewatch several years later and seeing if it holds up right now. But what an episode to start this era with.
It is, yeah. We did have that mini episode where we were kind of worried about burning through things too fast. But also something else we've expressed on Pull to Open is that the randomizer hasn't brought us to a lot of Dalek episodes, or certainly not a lot of Dalek episodes with Dalek in the title.
Right.
We've had one, I believe, Power of the Daleks. The Troughton opener, the animated one. I don't know, Peter, if we had any other of the Daleks, and anything at all with Dalek in the title?
I don't think so. I'm scrolling really quickly here through the Codex, and it isn't. This is wow.
We
It's a lot
didn't
of
have
Cybermen.
we haven't had the Daleks master plan. We haven't had the Master's Dalek plan. We haven't had any of it.
The Daleks.
The Daleks or the mutants or whatever.
What if they called this one the Dalek? I think that would have just been a little too if they had the in front of it. Wonder if that was ever considered.
Yeah, well, obviously they didn't think about SEO in those days. Let's just call it Dalek.
I feel like, this is the result of like a lot of back and forth over the title, and like, screw it, just call it Dalek.
Yeah, no one's ever called it Dalek. Just one word.
Won't mistake it for anything else. Like it's exactly what you get on the tin. You get a Dalek. You don't get two. You don't get zero.
Just one. Just one. Just like Genesis of the Daleks perhaps should have been called the Three Daleks. This is the Dalek. But yeah, maybe they should have called it the Metaltron. I don't know. Just really preserve the secret there. I don't know. Anyway, but before we get to that, let's enter the feedback loop where we talk about the week in the show itself. We get super meta. So, Pete, what's been going on with Pull to Open?
Well, let's start with the you knew this was coming moment of, hey guys, we love reviews. Reviews are a thing that podcasts really thrive on. If you haven't left a review of the show, please go into the Apple Podcast Store if you can, or the app, and leave a review. It doesn't have to be very long. Reviews really do help visibility of the show in that app. Okay, moving on mercifully this week, because we just have so much to talk about. First of all, YouTube is continuing to grow. It's been great. We've got a lot of new subscribers there. Thank you very much, everyone who's subscribing here on YouTube, if that's where you're watching. It'd be great if you could share the channel with your friends. And also, don't forget to hit that, I guess it's a bell icon, whatever it takes to sort of turn on those notifications when we post new content. And we keep posting new content. As you know, every Wednesday, we're posting our older episodes that were never cut to video before. That's like season 2 of Pull to Open. Those are all coming there. And the new stuff is coming every Saturday. You're getting all of our plot summaries in video form, and you're getting all the TikTok videos, which are just really social shorts. Those are all here too. So please indulge here on the YouTubes.
Yes, like, subscribe, and exterminate that notifications button. Just smash it so hard. Stick your sucker right on that subscribe button.
Yeah, I want to see that button going negative.
Okay? Exactly. With a little skeleton. Yeah.
Skeleton bell. Someone Photoshop that. I'll throw that in the show notes. That'd be amazing.
I love it. Love it. Love it.
So guys, moving on really quickly through this, because man, we really want to talk about Dalek among other things. But the social is doing great. TikTok, we've actually I feel like we're really back on TikTok. Over the summer, we were, our schedule was a little off here and there, and we weren't as consistent about uploading there. We're back, and we've actually had our first viral hit in a while. And it's on one of our time flight videos. First of all, by the way, you can follow us there at Pull to Open. All one word. But our time flight videos from that podcast are all up there now. And the one about Tegan's leaving scene in that episode is really,
quote unquote,
quote unquote, has really resonated with the audience. And that's really no surprise given what the events of the Power of the Doctor turned out to be.
Tegan's return.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of people who saw that and might not be fully aware of Tegan's history. And Time Flight is a big sort of landmark episode in that history. So we had a couple great comments on that video, and here they are. The first comment is from a user named LJ, and I want to highlight this comment. It's going to sound like I'm correcting them a bit, but I think it's a different interpretation. So please, no one, especially you, LJ, who being a great follower and commenter, don't take offense to this at all. But the comment goes first: they didn't have the closest relationship. To be fair, even when she comes back, he's kind of like, oh, well, this is like heart emoji.
Right. Heart all over the face emoji.
Yeah, and this refers to like a scene when she comes back in Arc of Infinity, and this is happy, and the Doctor just kind of smiles. Oh, seems like you're back with us. But I feel like that's not the Doctor. That is emotional for the Doctor. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he does not express himself well. One of the things that I think is well established, classic series and NuWho, the Doctor is not a great communicator and really in touch with his feelings. He's not that emotionally mature.
Yeah, remember even in NuWho, like he has to carry flashcards around with him to to remind himself how to say emotional things, right? I'm sorry I left you in Aberdeen, etc., etc. Right? So yeah, that's maybe I don't want to presume that LJ is not British or is not familiar with the British, but we are rather reserved emotionally. That's kind of our thing. It's kind of our biggest compliment on anything is to say that it's not bad.
Right.
Yeah. It's acceptable.
I do think the Doctor has deep love for Tegan, and even by time flight. In fact, the fact that he abandons her, and I'm kind of answering the thing that I brought up in the video here, the fact that he goes out basically looks for any excuse to abandon her, I believe, is probably because he is getting very attached to her, hates goodbyes, and just is kind of breaking up with her before she can do it to him. I think that's the whole logic there, honestly. And
classic tactic.
Yeah, and so you really her actual leaving scene, and I don't want to get too into it because we'll get to it when we do Resurrection of the Daleks, but it's kind of gut-wrenching, and it's kind of gut-wrenching for the Doctor. You can tell he's on the verge of losing it when she goes in the way she does, because it's so tragic. And it's there is a very emotional. This is really why I think that Tegan is the Fifth Doctor's best companion. And
Davison,
they brought her back.
It's funny watching Davison. He's a young Doctor, but he totally has that British reserve, and he's always trying to put a smiling face on things. He's a very optimistic Doctor. So yeah, he's not particularly great with goodbyes.
And I'll just say, I meant to say this before I went into that thought, but this second TikTok comment helped crystallize my thoughts on that, and it's from another user called Lou FF4TW. I guess Fantastic Four for the win. I'm guessing. I don't know.
Yeah. There we
go. The Doctor hates goodbyes, and he believes she doesn't want to be with him anymore. So extra worse. Oh yeah. Right. And he believes that, and it's such a good. Again, confirmation. The Doctor's bad at communicating. If they just had a conversation,
right.
All of this would have been.
I mean, this really coming after Power of the Doctor just proves that even Jodie isn't great. I mean, yes, she has a wonderful leaving scene with Yaz, but what about Dan? What about the way she just drops off Dan, jumps back in the TARDIS, see ya, bye. Not going to do goodbyes, bye. In fact, doesn't she even have that line? Something like, not goodbyes, I'm off. And then Yaz gives him a proper goodbye.
Yeah, been fun, Dan. See ya.
Yeah, off now. Going to go cry quietly behind this door. Yeah. Oh,
poor
Doctor.
Dan.
Poor
Anyways,
Dan.
Thank you so much. TikTok followers, always keep those comments coming. We love interacting with you there. And we also love interacting with folks on our other socials, Instagram and Twitter, where we're at Pull2Open63. Twitter lately, of course, has been a buzz with Doctor Who activity. It's been great to sort of participate in that as much as we can. So feel free to drop us a line there or a comment.
Yeah. Talk about
how you're liking the show.
It does feel like we're in a Doctor Who social media renaissance after Power of the Doctor. And, not surprisingly so, given the ending, right? I mean, we should mention, go back and listen to the last 5 minutes of our Time Flight episode with Chris Burgess. I believe Chris brings up the rumor that it is going to end with Jodie regenerating into Tennant. And I think I said, if they do that, I didn't want to commit myself, but I was like, if they do that, it has to end with what has to be the final line of dialogue. Indeed it was. There's just no, sometimes you know RTD well enough, you know his stuff well enough, you kind of know where he's going to go on this, and where he's going to go is the biggest brain-breaking cliffhanger that he can possibly think of, to have your headcanon whirring for the next year, which is how long we're going to have to wait until the 60th anniversary special. Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta say, and by the way, I think we're emerging from the feedback loop here into our quick. Okay, so rules of the game on Power of the Doctor now, because we don't want to digress too much.
Yes.
You and I get one thought only to express on this podcast on the power of the Doctor, because otherwise it's just going to open the floodgates, and this will be the Power of the Doctor podcast. So
Indeed, yeah.
one thought each.
We don't want to get overwhelmed. We don't want to be sitting here.
We already cheated a bit with the dad
a little
stuff.
bit. Yeah, because it's just so much. It's so dense. It's so rich. But my one thought is I'll reduce it to one word and one pronunciation of one word, which is master. I'll make it masterful, if you will, because it had been pointed out before the episode that Sacha Dhawan is the first actor to pronounce it master rather than master, right? And I sort of feel that growing up. Quick diversion into Chris's history corner, my personal history corner. I grew up in the northeast of England, where in the north of England we say Bath rather than Bath, which is a very southern thing. Path rather than path. So I should have grown up saying master. I did not. I said master, and I believe that is entirely due to Doctor Who. It is entirely because of Anthony Ainley. That I when in our Church of England school we used to sing that hymn, "He who would valiant be against all disaster, let him with constancy follow the master." I used to love singing that line. So the master, point being, the master in this episode is amazing. I did listen to a few sort of podcasty reactions to Power of the Doctor, and was surprised that a lot of them sort of just didn't seem to get what the Master's Dalek plan, as it were, as he says, was in this. Like, what is the Master's overall plan here? How does he think he's going to take over the universe this way? Why doesn't he just bounce around the universe pretending to be the Doctor in the TARDIS anyway, since he's got a TARDIS that looks like a police box? And that just seemed to me to totally miss the character of the Master, because his whole thing is that he doesn't exist without the Doctor. And what we got in the Power of the Doctor was the most interiority, to use a fancy word, from the Master that I think we've had since Sound of Drums, Last the Time Lords, right? Where we discovered that the Doctor has the Doctor Who theme running in his head, the Sound of Drums. Here we get the Master saying, don't make be myself again. Like I wanted to be you. Like that was so. But also Dhawan's performance. I mean, the Rasputin song, the wonderful, like the line that made me laugh the hardest in the entire episode is where Ace says to him, "Last time I saw you, you were half cat," and the Master just says, "Man's allowed to experiment." Love that so much. Sacha Dhawan was like, he was given full license to be as nutty as he possibly could be. And I just, he was all over the place in a good way. Like his just crazy Doctor Who cosplay, where he emerges from the TARDIS in like question mark shirt,
on his way to Gallifrey 1,
Yes, it's so good, and he's got the earring as well, and so it's not really played for laughs, because of course, a male presenting character like this generation of the Master can wear female clothing, so what? But he's just sort of presented as a nutty Doctor Who fan, because he's just mixing all the regenerations together, right, in his outfit. And that just seems to me to get right at the character of the Doctor, like of the Master, right?
Yeah. No, he was great, and honestly, I kind of hope it's his last episode as the Master. Not that I didn't like him, I loved him.
Yes,
but I'm like, how do you top that?
Yeah, you can't. He said, Sacha Dhawan has gone on record saying he would like to play the Master again. Obviously, that's up to Russell T Davies. But I think you're right. I think this is like a Baby Yoda situation where I felt Baby Yoda should have exited Mandalorian at the end of season 2, even though we all love him. It was just the perfect exit, and this is the perfect exit for Sacha Dhawan.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure in some way he'll be back, whether it's Big Finish or whatever. But like, again, in terms of if that's his swan song, he went out on top, man. That was amazing. So my one thought, it's a little meta, but remember prior to Power of the Doctor, we were talking about, well, what are they going to do with the Timeless Child arc? It's kind of like, this is a thing that he did. It's a signature thing. How's he going to wrap it up? And he kind of didn't. except counter view, he kind of did. In that
he did by not doing,
he exactly, he did it by not doing it, and this is ultimately why I think the power of the Doctor ultimately, I hope, and I feel this way, I think, but it made my I now have made peace with that storyline, which I really didn't like. Spoiler alert! I think anyone who's listened to me the last couple of years, I mean, it's like, all right, like, you know, it's part of the show, but it's not a thing I'm a big fan of. But I sort of made my peace with it because I see it now. Well, it's kind of there in subtle ways, right? So it's like you can infer from the Master's plan to force the Doctor to regenerate into him, that he essentially takes over the Doctor's body, and therefore he's now the timeless child. He's the special one, and he also has an infinite regeneration. So there is a logic to it beyond just his clear issues with the Doctor and needing to one-up them and be them being the most important person in the Master's life. So
closing the book on the timeless child, I think was like we can now see what Chibnall was going for, which is that he wanted to kind of brain and Morbius this, you know, he wanted to have the vague sense that the Doctor has had more regenerations than you know about. Unfortunately, he didn't really make it vague, right? Like the Timeless Child is a very, very specific plot. You can look back and see how he tried to make it a bit vague, like with all the stuff at the Irish police station. Like, you know, is this a dream? What's happening? You know, the cliff edge does make another reappearance here, right? So that was one reference.
Yeah.
But yeah, we can just see that he kind of just like wanted to add this vague thing to canon, and he overshot.
He did, but with here, by not bringing it up, I think was the right call. The subtle references with the Master's plan, as well as he kind of says like, I forget what it was, but it's like, was this the first time? Maybe not. You were forced to regenerate once, right? Well, maybe more than once. Who knows? You know, he kind of says that at one point. So that was kind of a vague reference to it. But ultimately, what this got me to think of the Timeless Child as is exactly your point. It's like Brain and Morbius or like the Valyard, right? Which both are canon, like both explicit, but we just kind of like, let's just never talk about that again. Let's just move on, you know? Like and that's honestly like there's actually a little bit about this in one of the books I like about the history of Doctor Who, a history, where it's like, this is what you do. It's sort of like your canon, right? Not just head canon, but like throw out the stuff you don't like, include the stuff you do, and eventually this will become, 10, 15 years in the past, and maybe someone will do something with it. But if everyone just ignores it, which I kind of hope they do, and it's just not there. So,
as you said earlier, Big Finish is good at filling in this stuff. We do have a Fugitive Doctor series coming, I believe, because, her character was kind of sold a bit short by just being a hologram. So looking forward to Big Finish once again, like almost like the Clara Splinter, who we often bring up on the show, like just cleaning up the Doctor's mess. And in this case, cleaning up the show's mess and its loose ends. We'll wait to see what Big Finish does with it.
Okay, guys, last bit of other business. I promise we're going to start talking about Dalek very, very soon. But we also have to talk, there's in addition to the power of the Doctor, there was also a good chunk of Doctor Who news.
Yes.
And the biggest headline of which is that the BBC is now partnering with Disney Plus. Again, this is old news to everyone listening, but that outside of the UK, if you want to watch Doctor Who, now it's a streaming show. And you got to subscribe to Disney Plus for it. And this is a massive deal, I have to say. This is a big landmark moment in the history of the show itself, the production and distribution of the show. Because one, I never would have called this 12 years ago when BBC America took over, and it seemed like that was going to be the strategy going forward, that we would one day see it depart the properties, which again, I'm not saying it's a surprise. It's not, given how media has evolved and how the BBC and their digital strategy has changed and their cable strategy has changed abroad. But holy cow, just looking at the history of it, what a pivot from
really?
this. Yeah.
And I think it's a generally positive one. I mean, my first reaction was that I tweeted about was like, did 7-year-old me wish really hard? Because like now
Right.
Star Wars and Doctor Who are going to be available, in their entirety, I would hope, on the same platform. BBC America, AMC, Plus never worked for me because it meant that you had ads. You had ads in the middle of Doctor Who when you were watching it first time in the US. Doctor Who was never meant to have advertising in it, ever.
True.
And it's so jarring for me as a British fan to see that here in the US.
I gotta say, and there were so many ads during the Power of the Doctor. I watched the live broadcast on BBC America, and it was like, oh man, and they, the way ads are on cable these days, it's they repeat the same ads many, many times in a 2-hour stretch, and you're just like, oh, good God.
And you can't, in America, TV writers are sort of built to expect ad breaks, so you sort of structure the show that way.
Yeah, you structure the acts around ad breaks for sure. And even like shows that are really skilled at that do things like cliffhangers. And I remember Buffy and Angel, because Joss Whedon wrote them and then they were written for US. I mean, every ad break usually is sort of a sudden cliffhanger. It's really great.
Right. You get the audio sting of an orchestra rising to a note and then fade to black. You always have to sort of build the commercial in your own head when you're, say, watching Buffy now. But yeah, so I'm glad that that's not going to be an issue now. I think the Disney Plus thing is great for that. Do we know, and is perhaps the new /old diamond logo, which I love so much. Is that a hint that it's no longer going to be on BritBox, that we are going to get all of the classic Who on Disney Plus as well? Do we know anything about that?
That'd be amazing. We don't know. No confirmation either way on that. I was very curious. I think it's another podcast to talk about the logo and what it might represent going forward. Because I don't want to read too much in the logo. But it is interesting. It is way cool updating of it. But the last thing I want to say about the Disney Plus thing is that this is such a big deal. I think also from a partnership aspect. So in addition to the existence of the partnership, which was predicted, is big news in itself. But how they announced it. Ncuti Gatwa made an appearance. As we all know, Ncuti is the 15th Doctor and is going to take over from Tennant at some point. But he made an appearance on Kelly and Ryan here in the States to basically make the announcement, which again, think about that. He comes to America, but also like Kelly and Ryan, it's ABC, it's Disney.
Yep.
So I think they're not just going to be a distributor here. You know what I mean? Like, and that's not to say they're going to have like creative control or whatever. Maybe they do. I don't know. But I think they're going to have more influence than you might think. And I don't necessarily think that's a terrible thing, but it is like there's going to be like just the inherent nature of this partnership. There's so much stakes riding on both sides that they're going to have more to do than just be the place where you click play.
They are definitely. I mean, what Disney is great at is advertising. Like we were complaining that the Power of the Doctor, like the word we never knew when it was coming. Like the trailers seemed sort of haphazard. Like we've had this complaint for a few years now that it's like we don't know when new Doctor Who is out. The marketing hasn't been great. Disney is hella good at marketing, and that's mostly what they do. There was a Daily Telegraph story that came out this week. I just want to say to any American fans, really just don't believe what the Daily Telegraph says on anything. First of all, they're a very Brexity paper. They're kind of off the deep end. They used to be reliable. They're really not so much anymore. They're
important media tips here on Pull to Open. It's a new segment.
But also, if you're worried about Disney Plus, like the article basically said, Disney Plus is going to have some measure of creative control, or Disney's going to have a measure of creative control.
I don't think that's quite it.
That's not it. It's not it. And I just wanted to share as a Star Wars fan, like I've been fighting this for years when fans are like, Disney is ruining Star Wars, or Disney is now in charge of Star Wars. Well, we never said that for Pixar. We never said that for Marvel. They are Disney. Why do it's kind of weird that we never talked about Lucasfilm as its own entity, but it is. And I just want to share the words of Timothy Zahn, who's a famous Star Wars author, when he was describing we were on book tour together briefly. He was describing like the relationship between Disney and Lucasfilm. He's like, what happens is Disney brings one dump truck of money up to Lucasfilm on a Monday, dumps it off, comes back on Friday with 2 dump trucks to collect the profits. That's Disney. That's what they do. They give their creators creative control. There may be a little bit of, behind the scenes pressure here and there, 1 or 2 other things, but they don't like come in and stomp their big foot over everything and like, just, don't worry. And certainly RTD is not going to there's going to be a Disney person watching over his shoulder as he's late night typing away in his scripts with a cigarette in his mouth in Wales. No, not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think there's going to be anything like that in terms of that pressure and whatever. But I do think it's just because he can't get it out of his head, and anyone working on Doctor Who can't not think that, this is it's going to be on a Disney Plus show on that app in the same place that Andor and The Mandalorian and all the Marvel stuff is, and that's your audience in the world. And that's like what effect that has. Maybe it's nothing. I don't think it's nothing. I think it's something, but it's certainly not that top-down pressure that I think a lot of people misread.
Yeah,
I think that's not it. But it is it will have influence, is all I'm saying.
If it helps, think of RTD as the new Kevin Feige, the way that he has total control over the Marvel meta story, as it were. RTD is an award-winning screenwriter. Like he just, everyone knows him, everyone loves him. He's going to have Disney's total confidence. So don't even stress.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But again, to the original point, I'm just glad I'm going to save some money going forward. I don't have to do HBO Max anymore. It's a pricey subscription, man.
Oh, sorry, HBO Max.
Yeah, as much as I love those social media guys, they were very responsive. Remember that way back? We had corrected the spelling of In the Forest of the Night, and it was KNIGHT. And we messaged them, and they fixed that. Boom, lickety split. So no offense, HBO Max, but you are a pricey subscription.
Well, maybe by the time we get there, Disney will have just bought up all of HBO Max as well. They're just on a tear of collecting properties. So,
all right. So we really weren't stalling, guys. There's just so much to talk about. I kind of might have been a little bit stalling.
Yeah, you might be stalling like Stallman, because it is time to do TLDW, which is what we do every week on this podcast. We summarize the show that we're talking about, in this case, in case you forgot from 20 minutes ago, Dalek.
It was actually 30 minutes ago, Chris. So I might have to start this episode with a bit of a disclaimer. I might have to edit in. Guys, we really went on.
If you want to
fast forward,
just jump in half an hour and you'll get to the Dalek part. So every week we do TLDW, Too Long Didn't Watch, Too Long Doctor Who, Too Long Did Watch, in the case of Dalek, I'm sure. Too Long Dalek Watch. Where one of us attempts to summarize the show in record time in 1 minute per NuWho episode, which is what this is. And Pete, it is your turn.
It's my turn. I gotta say, there's a lot of inherent pressure on this one. I think I'm ready for it, but
after doing The Runaway Bride, like we've regular fans know we've been through a lot of classic Who, so coming back to NuWho, it was like our muscles, our story summary muscles were not quite built up enough for these, relatively fast-paced stories. So it's a bit tough. I think you've done some NuWho stuff recently in TLDW.
Did I do the Witchfinders?
Yeah, I think you did.
You might have done that one. Yeah.
Well, one of us, because we went to Rosa and the Witchfinders, like one of us did one of us did the other. So I think we're ready. I think you're good for this. It is
working out.
Yeah, it's one location. Simple cast of characters. Not to put any pressure on it, but I think you're good. So.
No, the only thing keeping pressure on me is my webcam that I'm staring down like a Dalek iris right now. There is a bit of a blue glow, I gotta say.
Yeah. We do close all our tabs, like we are flying blind when we do TLDW. So, are you ready, sir?
I'm ready.
Here comes the official pull to open summary of Dalek in 1 minute. In 3, 2, 1. Go.
Rose and the Doctor materialize in a facility in Utah. It's underground, and it's a place where they keep a lot of alien artifacts as well as an actual living alien. It actually turns out that this living alien is a Dalek. And it's the arch nemesis of the Doctor, obviously. He wants to kill it, but he's captured. Rose ends up accidentally freeing the Dalek by touching it, and it breaks loose. It repairs itself by tapping into the base's power and starts slaughtering everyone there. The Doctor tries to stop it by keeping it sealed, but it seemingly kills Rose, and he lets it loose when he realizes Rose is actually alive, but it turns out, plot twist, the Dalek has been mutating because of what it did. It had to sort of take her genetic material to regenerate itself. So it's becoming more emotional, more human in a sense. And even though it wants to kill the person who's been torturing it that whole time, Rose talks the Dalek out of it and almost frees it, but the Doctor nearly kills it. Rose stops him from doing that. And the Dalek ends up actually killing itself because its mutation into something that isn't Dalek, and that's terrible for it. And they leave.
Hey.
With a new companion named Adam. I guess.
Yeah. I mean, Adam, like, it's such a thing with Dalek, right? That, Adam's a companion because he traveled in the TARDIS once. I think we may need to, rewrite the rules on who's a companion.
I'm sorry, man. It is. We could start there if you want on like which it is. I gotta say, it's kind of a companion. He went to the far future and got the thing in his head, but maybe that's a debate for a long game.
Kate Lethbridge Stewart is a companion now that she's traveled in the TARDIS and the power of the Doctor.
Well, she was in the support group. I guess she was just recruiting. But
yeah.
Anyway. So the summary. I think I got most of it. I did I think it was all right. I got like plus 2 seconds or something.
Yeah, I think you got that. Good job. It is, I think, it is deceptive, like the Dalek itself. It's kind of deceptively powerless in a summarizing way. But
I think there's a lot of rabbit holes that could have gone down, but we're going to go down most of them now. But man, I just started off like this is such a triumph for the NuWho, and it's such a pivotal episode in the whole series. But for Doctor Who at the time, which was really like it was back and it was just starting to prove itself and showing kind of what kind of show it is. To this, like all eyes were on this episode from the existing fans. Like if they screwed this up, like it's over. You know what I mean? Like this show's a flop. Like you got to bring back the series premiere monsters, and you got to do it well. And not only did they do it well, this is a home run. Like holy cow! Not only did they give all the fan service, and I would even argue a lot of it's not necessarily fan service, just making the Daleks, updating it, and making them formidable opponents. Like that's just what you need to do in the show for it to work at all.
It's not fan service. It's if anything, it's casual fan service. It's oh, you've been making jokes about Daleks and stairs for years. Like, we're really going to lean into the Dalek stairs thing. We'll get to why, Remembrance of the Daleks got there first. We'll get to that. But yeah, I think you're right. I think it is important to situate ourselves in space and time, first of all, that this is season 1. This is the show proving itself. This is Eccleston still figuring out his character, the Doctor, still proving himself. And think about what came before this. Like, what do we have? Rose, it's an okay opener, like it does the job. The end of the world was the going forwards in time to the end of the Earth one. Again, we've seen that before. It's okay. The Unquiet Dead, okay, cool, got a cool guest star. Aliens of London, World War III.
You might say it's split fans of the show.
Yeah, split them right down the middle of the head with a zip.
You went there before I did.
I gotcha. But yeah, the Slitheen, is a bit puerile. It's like, okay, are they going a bit too much in the this is a kid's show direction?
Right.
And then you get this, and look at what happens to season 1 after this. Like with the possible exception of the long game, which is next, the Simon Pegg episode, we're going to have to rewatch it, I think, to form an opinion on that. It is one of the most extraordinary runs in Doctor Who history from this onwards, right, through the end of Eccleston. We've got Father's Day, we've got Empty Child Doctor Dancers, we've got Bad Wolf Parting the Ways. I even like Boomtown. Like that was an very nice. Just sort of slow the pace down a little bit. Doctor has dinner with the Slitheen. Basically, you kind of need those. Not everyone can be a banger. Those subtler, quieter, more philosophical episodes. But that run. I mean, I remember I was watching it at the time, and I think I watched Rose, and I was like, okay. I watched a few more. I did not actually see Dalek until the next year, because I just kind of tapped out at that point. So more fool me. Because, this is also where Eccleston comes into his own as the scared Doctor, as the, last of his race Doctor. Like, we hadn't really explored that. We hadn't talked about the Time War too much. It had just been teased up until that point. And here it all comes out, and it still gives me chills. Like, I will say, little meta behind the scenes pull to open thing. I normally don't go straight out from one episode of pull to open to watching the next Doctor Who that we're covering. I did that this time.
Oh wow!
Like, literally, as we hung up on the call last week, I went and watched Dalek. I was like, I'm just going to set this up on my Apple TV, right? I'm just going to watch the first 5 minutes. Oh no! I had to watch the whole damn thing. And I will go further and say it's not just one of the best episodes of Doctor Who. I think it's like a masterclass in TV writing.
I'd agree.
Because it is so tight.
Not a scene is wasted. Not a scene is wasted. Everything is just pivotal, and everything's at 10.
Yeah,
throughout.
Yeah, even though it's 9,
even 11,
everything's a 10. Yes, Eccleston, he's a 10, but he's really 9. It's apparently it went through 14 different drafts between Robert Sherman and
does that include
RTD.
Jubilee?
Yes, so that's the other thing. Of course, we have to mention it's based on a Big Finish special that Robert Sherman also wrote called Jubilee, which I actually started listening to last night. Pete, you have listened to it.
No, I haven't. I've never listened to Jubilee.
Oh, wow.
No, actually, I meant to in prep for this edition, but I couldn't do it. I've read enough about it and enough summaries about it to know what happens.
Yeah, same. There's a single Dalek in that, but it's sort of in an alternate Britain timeline. It's sort of Dalek meets Inferno, right?
Yeah, and I think some of they took the best elements of that, obviously, and I think virtually all of it works. I think the one thing that is still a bit of nagging question for me, and I might as well get any nitpicks I have out of the way at the start, which is that you never really get a convincing explanation for why the Dalek never talks to Van Statten, and it's all implied that because he's been tortured, there's kind of this bitterness and resentment that I'm not even going to give you the time of day. But it is a weird kind of choice given Daleks, who we know are generally leap at the chance to say what they're doing, or just have conversations as banal as they are. That's the one thing that I might say. I wouldn't say it's a really minor nitpick, I gotta say, because otherwise, in terms of the story, it's completely fine. But it is like when you step out of it a bit and look at Daleks broadly, it's like, okay, why didn't you talk to him?
Yeah, I mean, you can nitpick this. I certainly have my own. You have to sort of dig really deep to find the nitpicks.
Really deep, honestly.
Really deep. And we don't want anything that we're going to discuss to take away from the brilliance of this episode. But it is explored further in Robert Sherman's Target novelization of Dalek, where it's sort of revealed. You see it, a lot of it from the Dalek point of view. And you see, which really kind of makes the fact that this is a Dalek being tortured, kind of really comes to the fore. But they really play that up. They really play that up. But it's a young Dalek. That's basically what they say. That it doesn't really know what it's doing, which really enhances the emotion of this episode.
Well, I also just love that. I love it generally that. That there's nothing special about this Dalek. It's not the Supreme Dalek. It's not the Cult of Skaro. It's not the Special Weapons Dalek, or the automatic ice cream Dalek. This is just a regular, everyday soldier Dalek. That's I think that's an essential component of it, honestly. And I think it gets across just how dangerous one of these things is. and really gets at the essence of what they are, because you couldn't really get at that essence with like a special Dalek. I want to you want it to be the textbook example of what these creatures, this race is, and why, because otherwise you wouldn't get as well the sense of like why the Doctor has such hatred for them, because this ugly thing is the example for its entire race.
Yes, yeah, and it is a stand-in for the race, but it's also like it's the first time we see a sad Dalek. The way it lowers its eye stalk, like you really feel for it, and you hear it screaming, and you're super uncomfortable. But yeah, and so it does both of these things at the same time. Like, you know, we understand so much. You can come in as a casual fan, watch this, and you get the Daleks. You know, I know Billie Piper on set, we kind of didn't understand because she wasn't really a Who fan at that point. She didn't understand like why people were so scared of this thing. Then she starts acting opposite and she gets it, you know, and the lines draw her in and she like totally gets it, you know, so she really sells the moment of being sad for the Dalek.
Yeah, it definitely shows like how much Russell Davies understands the Daleks, but also understood his job here. And then, you know, credit to both Davies and Shearman, because I know they had a lot of back and forth.
Totally.
Those 14 versions.
Yeah.
And I think they both had sort of, I think Davies had a clear vision of what this episode had to do, and Shearman had a great story that was really riveting, and they both seem to understand the Daleks well.
Yeah, Shearman brought the idea of the single Dalek, right, which we've never seen. And I would like to actually just quickly.
We've seen 5 Doctors.
5 Doctors. Okay, but like it's, you know, that in a, you know, an episode with Dalek, a story with Dalek in the title. Like this is the only time we've seen a single one.
I just knew the fans would come at us for that one.
Yeah. Yeah, of course we've seen single Daleks in the context of like, you know, multi-monster stories. Maybe we also saw a single one in Time of the Doctor, although I'm sure there were more than one in that scene. But I would like to suggest that there may be a mathematical formula here at work, which is the fewer Daleks that you actually see on screen, the better the story is. Because remember, we went to Genesis of the Daleks here, widely regarded as the best Dalek story ever. That only had 3.
That's true.
And there is more menace because you're basically only one of them on screen at the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that holds up. I will say I think they used to boast that Asylum of the Daleks had the most Daleks on screen ever in like the Dalek Parliament or whatever, and I think that lends a lot of support to your theory.
Exactly.
But with this one, the Dalek episode, obviously immediately after this one, is the Parting of the Ways, and as you were just saying, that's a pretty amazing one too, and that had like a whole armada of Daleks. But I think that works in part so well because of the contrast.
Yes.
Like we've shown here how formidable just one is, and now there are thousands, if not millions, of these things. So it's a really great sort of piece of just suspense for that particular episode. Here I think it's really great. Like, I mean, let's sort of break down a little bit what Davies and the story has to do. Not only does it have to reintroduce the Daleks and make them more menacing, and it totally succeeds, but it also has to give us this new perspective on the Daleks and the Doctor post-Time War. And that's in the hands also equally, if not more, of Eccleston. And holy cow, does he get it. And holy cow, does he really rise to the occasion here and make all the right choices in terms of his rage, his emotional level. If you look at those early scenes in the episode and contrast them to what he becomes later, I mean, there's just such an inflection point when he suddenly realizes it's a Dalek, and he basically kind of spends the rest of the episode mostly screaming, right? And rightfully so.
In both fear and anger. Yeah.
And you know, obviously what we're supposed to extract from this is like not just how bad the Daleks are, but because they're bad, but what they bring out in him. And his hatred just boils over immediately, and he spends a lot of time screaming at the Dalek, apparently, when he says like, I know what you deserve. And he says exterminate in that kind of evil, devilish tone. That was his idea. So that was, kudos to Eccleston.
Oh my god! And the first moment, like I'm curious what your kids thought of this, because like to me, if I'm thinking back, if I was watching this as a child, like the scariest moment would be the Doctor himself, like banging on the door when he first sees it's a Dalek. Let me out, let me out.
Yes.
Like when the Doctor himself is that terrified, has that much PTSD, like he's a parental figure as a child. That's gotta be terrifying. What did your kids think?
They were just riveted. They were just quiet. They were unusually quiet during the episode because it's drama. It's pretty amazing, right? Like that he's acting against this machine, this thing being operated by someone inside that's mostly design and is being the voice being done by Nick Briggs, who again always great, but here in his first outing, pretty much. I mean, did other things, but I mean, his first outing as a Dalek, like so gets it. I mean, for obvious reasons, he'd been doing it for audios and whatever else a lot before this, but they were just mostly riveted by it, and then just were like, wow, that was really, really good. I mean, they both love the episode, spoiler alert. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. I mean, he's very undoctor like in this one. Not only there, but like when he's screaming at the Dalek to kill itself, just go kill yourself, and he just again, he can't help himself, he just loses it, he just hates it so much. And he has that spittle on his lip, and I think someone suggested, "Oh, we had a little spittle on your lip there, Chris. Do you want to do that again? Should we do that again?" It's like, no way. Like that was perfect.
Perfect.
Like,
perfect. And it's all a build up to that most undoctorish moment where he's not just pointing a gun, but like practically a dimension cannon, right? Like the giant gun that he's got on his shoulder pointing at the Dalek that he's going to destroy it. Yeah. And wow, I mean, like this is one of the ways in which I think this is a TV writing masterclass. It's really just kind of explores how far from yourself you can get as a character when you're scared of something. Yeah. And that's definitely, like, the Doctor becomes the War Doctor in that moment. Like he is about to destroy that Dalek. He's more violent there than we ever see John Hurt later on.
Yeah, not just scared, but like hatred. Like it's both, right? Like, I mean, the hatred is important because it's almost like a divorced couple or a couple in the middle of a divorce, right? Like they matter so much to each other, and it's just this deep feeling that has come out of their relationship, and it's just no one can anger you so much as the person that you had this deep connection with, and it's somehow that's because of their history. That's what's here. It's just sheer hatred.
You've given me the idea of, like, they're sitting in mediation and the Doctor's like, here's an idea, kill yourself. And like the mediator's just got his head in his hands like, oh, no,
this could be
we talked about this.
This could be like, well, this could be a fun big finish where it's like, maybe it's the White Guardian and the Black Guardian or whatever has to like sit the Doctor and the Daleks down like, okay, guys, what are we going to do here? Every decade, every few hundred years, all of creation is threatened because of you guys.
Yes.
So let's calm the F down and figure this out.
And to that point, the Doctor is kind of self-aware in that he knows that his presence has done something.
Yes.
I mean, it is Rose's DNA that frees the Dalek, but he stirs it up and he knows it. And that may be the most self-aware we've ever seen the Doctor be.
It's a great moment where Goddard is it's in the elevator. She's like, why would it be a threat now? And he just answers very plainly, because I'm here. And he's activated something just by his presence in the it's the Dalek hatred, but basically the Dalek's going to figure something out because I'm here, and it does. And that scene, I mean, we got to give so much props to so many people. Like that scene with Billie Piper and the Dalek, and the way she plays it. I mean, again, I thought Rose and Billie Piper were great at just grounding the show in just realism, that everyday girl, and she plays it so well, and she has got those big eyes. It's such a perfect scene for her that you get the sympathy. She's practically crying. The Dalek is so manipulative here. It's genius. It's a genius. Like, I mean, there's been scenes in Doctor Who where the Cybermen talk about human emotions and like, well, we want to study humans to get to know them better and do things like this, except the Cybermen never do things like this. Like, it's like I love this is like the Daleks schooling them and like, okay, here's how you manipulate, use an understanding of emotions to manipulate. Because at this point, it's not human, right? Like,
Yeah.
maybe it has some feelings, but clearly it's just like, okay, it knows what it wants, and it never says touch me. It never
Yeah.
it never plays its hand. It's just like it's masterclass of manipulation there. It was just amazing.
Yeah, but is it? I mean, there aren't a lot of easy answers in Dalek, which is one of the great things about it. So you got to ask the question: is it manipulation? Like Dalek just wants to be free because it is being tortured. It has been screaming, and here's where I think we, it's not.
I don't believe it's ever glad. Like it says, like it's even capable of that. I am glad I met a human who wasn't afraid of me. It's like
okay, maybe he's going a little bit,
emotion.
but like it doesn't have to dig very deep to do the acting here, in terms of like the intro. And this is where I think we need to, not Chris's History Corner because everyone remembers it. The War on Terror. Right? 2005. We're slap bang in the George W. Bush era. Like we've had the revelations of Abu Ghraib and waterboarding. It's very much in the news. And what this show says is like it's not like preaching at you because the Dalek is actually evil. It does actually want to get out and destroy things. But also, like, we see scenes of torture that make us uncomfortable. And if we are uncomfortable torturing a goddamn Dalek, like the most evil being in the universe, and we're sort of made uncomfortable with that scene where it's being drilled into, like, how does that make you feel about torture in war in general? Right? It's maybe more effective than a bunch of, sort of preachy plays on the subject of the War of Terror, right? It does what science fiction does best. It goes at one remove from current events and allows you to examine them from a quote unquote safe position, even if that safe position is behind the sofa. And I kind of wanted to contrast this with, did you see Children of Men, the movie?
I did, yes.
Yeah. So that was maybe 5 years after this, but it was really trying to get at the War on Terror, right? There's even that moment that is way too on the nose, where Clive Owen's character is like going past this cage full of refugees and supposed terrorists, and there's one standing like the figure at Abu Ghraib with the sort of the triangular mask over his head. And it's like, and you're like, Children of Men, I get what you're going for here, bit too on the nose. But if you can safely remove it to humans versus Daleks, like here, it is unquestioning that Daleks is our worst enemy. Like, we don't even have to ask the question like we did with Al-Qaeda, like, well, what are their actual motivations? We know their actual motivations, but it's still a living being. And this is why the Doctor could have destroyed them. He could have genocided them in Genesis of the Daleks. He could have touched the two wires together, and he didn't, even though he knew all of the deaths he was causing by not doing it, because there was that essential humanity or Gallifreyanity or whatever you want to call it inside him. That we just don't do that. We're better, right? That feeling. And by the end of this episode, he's lost it. He's gone. He's full on War on Terror. Like, he's full on terrified. He's, he's like checking his envelopes for anthrax. He's just, just so paranoid at that point. And it's a fascinating examination of where we were in the world at that time.
Yeah, very much. I think, all that really resonates. I think the Dalek being sympathetic, it's not a pure Dalek, right? Towards the end. So it gets there's a couple of weird things where the analogy, like it's good analogy, or it's a good theme, more than analogy, but it is it breaks down a little bit because one, the Dalek sort of changes, and like Van Staten is just so sadistic, and maybe we are to infer a little bit that that's just kind of what happens to dictator type people, but there's no real reason to torture the Dalek other than his own ego.
Well, let's talk about Van Staten. We haven't really brought him up yet. Like he's it's easy to summarize this episode without him. And he was sort of the character that I most forgot, like watching it again, which is weird because in a way he's the villain. And he's just this collector, and it's hinted that he's actually a shadowy conspiracy figure behind all US elections. And that is one of my, like, if it reached deep for dud notes in this, I go to the scene at the start where he's like, who do we like for the next president, Republican or Democrat? And his aide says, Democrat, sir. And he's like, why? Because they're just so funny. I'm like, did that line even land at the time? Like the Democrats were sort of like divided in terms of their take on war and terror. It's all right, but I hear what you're saying. Yeah, he's the shadowy figure. He's a stand-in for America and American power in a lot of ways, right?
Yes, totally. And I think it's one of those. It's kind of love it or hate it moment because it is so over the top, and I think you could only do this in series 1, in a sense. Because you look at how, even in Davies' time, like how they played the president in The Sound of Drums and things that they've done with sort of President of the World with the Doctor, this just feels a little cartoony.
Yeah.
Like it's just a one level above that where there's a guy who owns the internet and again, that can work. And I think that the show itself isn't sure yet if are we going to be a little more on the realism side. Like I don't see it as like one or the other. It's more of a continuum. And from Rose on, like, I think it had more license to be this sort of style, more music video, more like this is a bit of an abstract version of the world, as opposed to something more realistic. So that said, I like Van Staten. I think he's the guy who does him is awesome. Like you love to hate him right off the bat. What we said earlier, like not a scene is wasted. Like there's a lot of like character building of Van Staten early on, so you know exactly where this guy is. Like there's that first scene we talked about. There's the bit where they get the toy, or not the toy, the musical instrument, which both gets you to sort of respect him as I guess an intellect comparable to the Doctor, who can manipulate that musical instrument in the same subtle way he can, but then he immediately throws it away. Again, another great character moment. Like, you're just like, what? What kind of dick are you?
I'm bored with this toy now, this alien, musical instrument that, it's not actually going to do anything for me. It's just going to be art, screw art. There's a lovely bit in the novelization that talks about the portrait of himself that he's got behind his desk and how that was made, and the fact that he went to every great portrait artist in the world until he finally found one that would debase himself, just doing a, straight up, you're a powerful man portrait. But it also said that he wasn't a fool, and he knew that the portrait artist was doing it ironically, but he didn't care. He's just like so seduced by his own power, which is kind of the key to Van Staten. He's the ultimate proof of that. The richer you get thing, which has been confirmed by studies, the more of an asshole you are, because the more removed you are from regular human being life.
That's I gotta say, if that sounds awesome in a sense. Like that's your power move, right? You did it ironically. Well, I'm going to cancel your irony with my own irony.
Yes.
By hanging up your ironic painting ironically. Therefore, it actually works. And it's like, oh my God, that somehow that works.
Yeah. I mean, not to say the dreaded T word, but it is something you can imagine Trump doing.
Well, I love that it's just never referenced. Like no one even does a double take. It's just like, oh, it's just there. Of course, because he's that guy who has this painting. It's like that's exactly who he is.
And maybe that's the one reason why you set this in America, because there are so many reasons to not set it in America. First of all, British actors not always great in American accents. Secondly, did you notice the Doctor tapping the enter key rather than the return key on his keyboard?
Right.
Yeah. Like that stopped me, but maybe only because I know that to be a British American.
I've heard this criticized before. I actually kind of like it. Well, I know, the return versus enter, sure. Yeah. But I think it's also been criticized that he's just tapping a computer key to open this thing. But I like that it's like familiar, right? That there isn't some master switch that's super tactile. They do say earlier that they have to do some serious computer hacking to even get the base to work because it's depleted of power. So, that was fine, as much as tapping a return key or an enter key isn't super dramatic as a massive physical switch. I thought it was fine.
Yeah. The other sort of real world thing we have to draw attention to is the fact that this is set in 2012, which seemed 7 years in the future. Doesn't Rose say, "Oh, I'll be 26 at that point"?
Exactly. Yep.
Which just kind of maybe don't remind us that the Doctor is traveling with a 19-year-old woman. That he's kind of falling for. Yeah, these days
that's above the age of consent.
Yeah,
he's an adult.
Oh, yeah. But it does sort of bring up.
Now, Chris.
Well, there's if this were a workplace situation, I think you'd have 900-year-old man in a position of power over a 19-year-old woman.
So you want an 875-year difference as opposed to an 881-year difference. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. You make a fair point that it's sort of like, what's even the difference at this point? We're all 19-year-olds, the Doctor. Yeah, but also there's the 2012. The fact that it's set in 2012. Why? There's no on-screen reason for that.
Yeah, agreed. It is a little weird. I think, honestly, again, it's series 1. They're trying to show that this is it's a time travel show, and this is sort of what happens. And then it's just a thing that Doctor Who, I think, again, it's done it before. I mean, you think about Fury from the Deep, which we've just come from, and they were definitely trying to do sort of future North Sea gas, and they didn't set it in a specific date, and only the animation, locks it into 1975. But it is like, well, let's do a little bit day after tomorrow. And in that case, I guess they had to show a more developed North Sea gas going on, but. It also has the added benefit of like, oh yeah, well, it's a kind of a time travel show, and if you go jump a few years in the future, that's what you get. And I think that's okay. Like, you can't make the show like, you can't be scared to do that just because the show will probably exist at the time that you will sort of pass eventually. You got to sort of take some risks and trust that the fans will make up headcanon and do whatever to fill in whatever blanks that occur. And and you can do it, right? Because one, it's not very dated in terms of like fashion or whatever. There might be some things you could pick at, but generally there's nothing here overtly 2012 or 2005 even in it. Plus the stuff that's happened since, which people have talked about, which is like, oh, the Daleks are publicly outed in both Doomsday and Journey's End. Everyone should know the Daleks. In fact, the show makes reference of that with Amy. Well, not only does it do that, it shows that Amy forgot, right? So you could always just say, well, the cracks in time, everyone forgot, including Van Statten.
Yeah, I also imagine that Van Statten is not a big reader of like UK news. He's not going to see the Battle of Canary Wharf, and maybe he's in his own sort of media bubble.
Well, you think Adam would mention something?
Yeah, this thing you're calling a Metaltron, I think I might have seen something about it on the news somewhere. Oh, that's right, Battle of Canary Wharf. Should
we talk briefly about Adam?
Sure. Yeah. As it was surprising to me that Rose kind of immediately goes for him. Like, she starts flirting the heck out of her scene with him.
Well, so far it's the only person her age, roughly, right? That she's kind of run into. I mean, apart from Mickey, who's already her boyfriend, kind of.
Who was very quickly forgotten in that moment. Like, let me bat my eyelashes at you while I'm looking over my bare shoulder.
So like, Adam, I think, is as a character is reasonably well thought out for his very limited run of the 2 episodes. Because here, he's kind of likable off the bat, like he's kind of the young guy who's like a little bit smarter than Van Statten in some ways, and he's a bit more of a safer for the male audience, I guess, because he's kind of nerdy. He's got a thing for Rose, but you also
big into computers,
big into computers, but he's clearly got a bit of an opportunistic side to him. And then
you'd have to work with Van Statten.
Exactly. He turns a little dark in his next episode, where he sort of kind of betrays the Doctor and by getting that surgery for himself. And he also has his own stash of weapons here, which again turns out to be save everybody, but at the same, almost save it. Like, I guess the Dalek technically saves everybody by killing itself, but it shows that he's he's a smart dude and can steer things in his in his direction. So
Yeah.
I think he works. And you also feel like, oh, the Doctor's believably annoyed by him.
Yes.
Yeah, getting to
Yeah,
this romantic space.
Yeah, it does definitely sort of set up a form for the Doctor to be kind of annoyed at people who are kind of, getting in the way of his quote unquote girlfriends. I mean, we saw it with Louis XIV in Girl in the Fireplace, right? He's the way he sort of brushes him aside. Yeah, you're the king, I'm the Doctor. Yeah, it definitely establishes a lot of things there. Speaking of the Doctor, as a thing that I forgot, and as sort of not quite a sexual being, but at least a semi-naked being. I'd forgotten Eccleston gets shirtless in this.
Yeah.
And we were talking about shirtless Doctor Who episodes in Spearhead from Space. We were asking if it happened ever at any other point in Classic Who. Well, here's the first time it happens in NuWho.
Yeah, like I said there, like pretty much every Doctor in NuWho has had a shirtless scene. I think it's like probably in their contract.
Yep.
So we had Tennant in, I think, Journey's End.
Yep.
We've had Matt Smith a bunch of times. And did Capaldi? I'm pretty sure Capaldi must have. I don't know. That's a good question.
Yeah, maybe not. But yeah, this is so sort of like it's such a James Bond moment where he's strapped to a thing, and they look like they've oiled him down. But if you're an Eccleston fan, like that's got to be one of your top scenes.
Well, not a scene's wasted. Again, you get more of this, a little bit, even more of that Staten. Like every time we see him in that first half of the episode, there's more layers to this manipulative guy. He talks about how he would, instead of curing the common cold, he'd do a million palliatives and just make tons of money on it. But also, the scene serves as the first reminder in the new series that the Doctor has two hearts.
Yes.
So that's a big deal.
Good point.
Bit by bit in the series, they're throwing in these Classic Who things, almost Easter eggs. And it sort of like comes to a culmination in School Reunion when, up until then, there was never really direct reference to the classic series, like specific events in the classic series.
Right. And then Sarah Jane brings it all back. Speaking of the X-ray of the Doctor they take there, this is kind of the first time we see the new extermination. In the classic series, extermination was they would go negative. You just negativize the film when you get exterminated, which was scary enough in itself. Then for like literally blink and you miss it, there's one moment in Remembrance of the Daleks, Sylvester McCoy episode, where you see the skeleton for the first time. It's like
no one blinks, by the way.
Don't.
That was a hard one to miss. But
like it's super fast CGI. But here you really see it. You really see the skeleton inside. And it's such a good effect. Oh my God, it is so powerful. And it reminds you of what is most scary about the Daleks. Like for me, growing up in Classic Who, the negative thing when you get exterminated was scary enough. Like it's a simple enough effect, but it's so spooky when you see it. And what RTD has said about this episode, not even the political stuff behind it, but like the overarching metaphor of it. When you see a Dalek like this killing so many people, this is about death. This is literally about death. It's about Daleks being the Grim Reaper. They're just unstoppable. They'll come to us all eventually. They become death, destroyer of humans. And I think you can't reason with them.
And that happens again and again. Honestly, I think Davies, it just shows how much he understands the Daleks and how to use them in Doctor Who. I mean, it's really kind of not a Dalek episode if there are tons of people slaughtered and at least one person you care about. You really have to otherwise, why have them? I mean, that's what they're all about, just killing everything. So here, even that guy, that one guard that we just talked about, who's the first skeleton negative effect, you get a little. You don't get much of his character. Apparently, there was tons of stuff cut, and there was way more. By the way, Adam was originally supposed to be like Van Statten's son, which was would have been a weird twist. But anyway, there's those two guards who help Rose and Adam get out of the vaults, and the one guy dies right away. Apparently, had more lines than the woman who eventually gets to the staircase and has sort of a memorable death. There was just tons of stuff, but yeah, he really gets it, and he really gets that like the Dalek. Well, you know what's interesting about it? This is a cool thing. I don't know if you caught this, but the Dalek doesn't actually say exterminate until it goes up and is about to kill Van Statten. It's a silent killer. Like, I love how the episode makes you wait for that.
Yeah.
Like, well, it says exterminate. Sorry, it says exterminate to the doctor. My bad. But it doesn't say exterminate when when it's killing people is what I mean.
Yeah. It's just a killing machine, and perhaps it is such a young Dalek that it didn't go to when you say exterminate class.
But it's interesting. Like, it doesn't say it.
And it's also interesting in the context of like the Witch's Familiar, when we learn that Daleks, like whenever they're really trying to say anything, like Missy has Clara say "I love you" or something like inside the Dalek, and it comes out as exterminate.
Oh yeah, that's very cool. That's a good Moffat take.
Yeah, lovely Moffat line. But I'm glad you. So let's go back to the staircase, because of course, again, we brought up Remembrance of the Daleks. Remembrance of the Daleks doesn't get enough respect. It's doing a lot of these things.
It's a good amount of respect.
A good amount of respect. We'll just see how much that's deserved when we get to it. But it does have the first Dalek, elevating up the stairs scene. That was still. This is still clearly better.
Yes.
Like, it builds up the tension. It's like, it's almost as if they pause for every member of the family to come into the living room. You're like, Mom, Gran, the Dalek has been stopped by stairs. Come watch. Like, it really ramps up the temperature at that moment for then the Dalek to say, elevate. And it's beautiful. And Robert Shearman wrote that scene first. In this episode. Like, he wanted to get that out of the way. As a Doctor Who fan, certainly in the dark times, you were sick of everyone saying, oh, the Daleks defeated by stairs, ha ha ha. So to put those casual fan words in the mouths of the people who are going to suffer when this Dalek climbs the stairs, that is so extra creepy, and I love it. Did that work well for you?
Oh my God, yeah, it was amazing. And it's interesting how more resonant that one is than Remembrance, even though like it was such a moment, I remember watching Remembrance for the first time back in the 80s and literally jumping out of my seat, like, holy cow, like they can't do that, like, and it was such a huge thing. So I kind of knew they were going to do that, like in this scene, I didn't know, but I was like, oh, well, they're going to show.
It's obvious as soon as they start, as soon as you see the staircase, it's kind of obvious. Yeah.
And I love how Adam mocks it with the line, and you're just like, oh man, like you think he's gonna die right then and there. But yeah, no, it works super well. Again, I think people are like, why would it say elevate? Well, because Daleks just announce what they do. I mean, it's just if they have a culture, that's what they do. I mean, like, move the ship, exterminate, elevate.
Never have a Dalek for a flatmate, because they're going to announce when they go to the bathroom every time, like, evacuate. But speaking of things that
I just want to say one more thing about that scene. I like the guard speech, and she's trying to talk it down, and she's being very reasonable, and the Dalek just isn't having it. Like, it's just like, no, I don't talk to anyone except time travelers. Like, you're just gonna be more cannon fodder here. And she's just kind of dumb, though, I will say. She's like shooting at it like it's just slaughtered dozens of guards. Why aren't you running too?
Yeah. I do like that they ramp it up. Like, you kind of believe that the guards at the end are like they're unsure, but their commanding officer is there and he's telling them to fire, and they have the safety in numbers kind of feel. And then the Dalek electrifies the floor, like by hitting and you don't like immediately get what the Dalek's plan is when he puts the sprinklers on, and then you're like, oh my God. Yeah, and it's so speaking of things that like were deliberately written in to sort of take all of the stuff that casual fans laugh at when it comes to Daleks, the plunger.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
first use of the plunger. Is that the first use of the plunger? Other than to sort of like
pretty much. I mean,
to actually kill someone.
yeah, I mean, this is the thing. Like the plunger, a lot of it is always just implied, and the only time I can recall in the classic series they literally do things with the plunger is two things. One, either they swap it out for like a thing that can zap through walls or whatever, or in remembrance of the Daleks, I've mentioned this before. They have controls that are specifically plunger friendly. And while it's sometimes unclear what they're doing, like there's more for the plungers to do. Yes, doing the plunger. This is another thing Robert Shearman very deliberately put in is the plunger death of the torturer. I forgot the character's name now, but it gets suckered to death.
Yes.
Which is a great moment, because he actually says it. What are you going to do? And yep, that's
Yeah.
basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to suck your face and crush your skull.
Part of what is great about that is that he doesn't even get to finish the line.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you going to do? Suck me to
Yeah.
like it's perfect timing. Perfect.
It's
and
a bit
so unexpected.
So they haven't done it since, and I'm curious why you think that is. And I'll tell you my theory. It's just that it's hard to make that effect look good. Like even here, there's a little bit of clear sort of photoshopping that they're doing.
Yeah, a little CGI
on the guy's face. Also, frankly, it is a bit gruesome. If you think of what it's doing. And I think for some reason the ray gun effect and just killing someone that way seems a bit more sanitized for a family audience. I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think anything about this is sanitized. Like I felt.
Oh no, not this. I mean, like, why haven't they done it
the
since?
fact that, well,
like,
I think
never done a death like that since then.
It works for the torturer because he's so unafraid. So he's got to get his comeuppance. So he gets close enough for it to happen. I don't think we generally see people get that close to a Dalek. It has to be someone who, doesn't understand. Like perhaps the Prime Minister, Harriet Walter plays the Prime Minister in, Revolution of the Daleks, was it? The Jodie New Year special that came a year after
right.
Yeah.
Revolution of the Daleks, yes.
Yeah. So like it could have worked there, but it just would have looked dumb. Like it's hard to, I think to your point, it's hard to make it look good. It's hard to find a scene where a character gets that close to a Dalek for it to happen. But
why wouldn't the Dalek just shoot them anyway? Because in this case, the gun isn't working.
Yeah,
and it's the only thing it can do. But at least it can still do that.
Yeah, it's sort of like it's a hand-to-hand combat arm. Which,
totally. So just to keep going on the design of the Dalek, the new Dalek design, because this is the first time, obviously, the new series that they appear. It's still the same design. Here we are 17 years later, and even though they've tried other things, they keep coming back to the gold Time War Dalek design. Because it's a home run. They hit it out of the park. I mean, if you think about it, like all the things they did to the Dalek to update it were such good choices. Like first, looks like a tank. Like everything looks super thick. There are like rivets. The blights even up top look like they're larger and more durable. The color, it's a single color. It's uniform, which I think it's the gold color makes it feel a bit cosmic, but you're not distracted by like why are these parts black and these parts gray and these other parts whatever yellow. Whatever, sometimes in the classic series they not that Daleks were particularly colorful, but it was like they would just color them in weird spots. You're like, well, that's why is that even happening? And maybe explain, but I like that it's uniform, that you're just not distracted by anything.
Explain. I do. Part of my headcanon now is like maybe the Daleks had a war with the Cybermen at some point before they got there. They reverse things on the gold front. As we learn in Power of the Doctor, like if we make our casing entirely out of gold, we will destroy Cybermen. Like maybe that's. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Looking like a tank is exactly what you want a Dalek to do, because as Sylvester McCoy mentions in the Doctor Who Confidential that goes along with this episode, like he brings up images of World War One. And then, and suddenly, like, tanks enter World War One, and these huge, impersonal, terrifying machines. And then, and the Daleks are that, but they're smaller, and they can get into your living room.
Yeah, totally.
That's what you want it to be.
Force you to hide behind that sofa, just like a trench. Also, like, in addition, they have for the first time these really deliberate, specific mechanical noises for everything, which they could have edited out, and whatever. Like, basically, they included like clear like noises as it moved its head, as it moved its gun. When it rotates, it makes a noise, and I think that's just really good choice. It just makes them feel more real. Honestly, it makes it just feel more tactile, and it's not some fantasy sci-fi beast. It's right here in the room.
Yeah, for all the fact that Remembrance of the Daleks did a few things first, like the extermination with the skeleton, the stairs thing. This is the first, like, this is the first time we see the casing open.
Right.
Yeah,
it's exploded open before.
Yeah,
but it hasn't actually opened. I mean, there's a bit in Resurrection of the Daleks where the heads go up.
Right.
So we'll get there.
Not quite
the same thing. No.
It is I believe the first use of the balls on the exterior of the Dalek.
Yes,
off.
First and last. Again, a thing they did here and never did again is that.
But I like the idea that it's the Dalek's suicide switch. Like, if you need to blow yourself up.
There's probably a ton of headcanon, and lots of people have talked about this before. It's probably, certainly, like, it's their self-destruct mechanism. But is it also a thing that does something else that can also, like, in other words, is it a thing that functions as something else all the time and then can also be used to destroy itself? Like, I don't know. I think, because I'd like to think it's that, because it's like, otherwise, like, why have this self-destruct thing on your skirt all the time?
I like to think that it's like Daleks have got to be really good at tennis or really into handball or something like that. Never without a ball. You just and they can catch them with the sucker. Like, it's Daleks actually pretty well built for sport.
Yeah, and if they ever lose, they could just set one off. Boom.
Yeah. Take that, Wimbledon.
But I could go on about, like, the details. Like, there's that neat little thing about right underneath the eye stalk that's just a symbol that's never really explained. But it's like, it's another thing that just, you could make up your own headcanon. It just makes it seem more alien and real. But the thing I really want to highlight is for the first time you see that rotating midsection.
Yes.
Which I thought, like, yes, fans have seen them climb stairs before, but we've never seen that. For me as a fan, a longtime fan, that was like an OMG moment. That is so cool to see that Dalek midsection just rotate and just be able to exterminate people all around it.
And the way that's like, it's a series of steadily evolving reveals of what this Dalek can do, right? It's the episode, not even self-consciously, I would say fully consciously, just like, we are going to change it. Everything you thought you knew about the Daleks is wrong. Like, here's what they can do as well. Here's why they're such effective killing machines. We're going to show everything. We're going to use every tool in our arsenal. And that is a great one. You're absolutely right. I got chills at that moment. The midsection's turning to the left. It's turning to the right. It's shooting soldiers all around it. And you believe it when the Doctor says that this one Dalek could annihilate all of Salt Lake City.
Yeah, absolutely.
You totally believe it.
Well, especially with that force field. So again, this has been written about to death, but the reason that it has this force field that vaporizes bullets as they come in is because from a practical effects standpoint, they just couldn't afford it with all the gunplay and being shot at. There were too many moments where they would have had to show, like, sparking from the bullets on the Dalek cases. So, like, we can't do it throughout. So they're like, well, we'll say it has a force field too, and, like, talk about serendipity. It's like, oh wow, now this thing is even more believably formidable. And you do need that bit of throwaway dialogue where the Doctor is like, look, it's got a force field, but it's not invincible. Like, you can hurt it if you concentrate your fire. And they kind of ignore him for like, what? Why would you not listen to this guy? even though I would have actually liked to seen though, because there was so many bullets. Like it kind of didn't need to concentrate the fire. There were so many people shooting at it in that scene.
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked to see more sparking or something, just to show that some of their bullets were getting through. Maybe that was what they were trying to do, and there was the rain and it wasn't entirely clear. But it is like that's kind of what. How could you not concentrate your fire in a situation like that? It's like, yet it's still still formidable enough to take it.
Indeed. Another one more first for this episode. I believe this is the first use of a choir for the music. Like Murray Gold decided that that's what the reemergence of the Daleks need. It really worked for me. What did you think of the music in this episode?
Oh yeah, scary, and it just shows that how like scary and scary epic. It kind of reminds me of that final scene in Return of the Jedi where the choir starts up as the Emperor's zapping Luke, and you kind of need that for your arch villain. This kind of like somehow the universe is going along with the epicness of this moment, and it's just this choir has risen to like, oh yes, it really just sort of emphasizes the raised stakes.
I thought you were going to mention the choir in Phantom Menace in Star Wars, where they really like that. One of the best things about that film, right, is the duel of the fates over the.
No, that's a good one too.
Where they really John Williams really ups the ante on the choir in that.
That is the one part of Phantom Menace I try to think about if I ever think about that movie. I just have sort of trained myself not to, I think.
So this is not the first time that a Dalek was mistaken or deliberately called something other than a Dalek. Because, of course, Genesis of the Daleks, they are Type 3 travel machines.
True.
Am I getting that correct? What about...
Mark 3, I believe.
Mark 3 travel machines. What are some other, we know that they're called drones in Revolution of the Daleks, where the Prime Minister's announcing these sort of super drones outside Downing Street. There does seem to be a bit of a Doctor Who history of just calling the Daleks something other than Dalek, right? Especially when you don't know what they actually are. Can you think of any others?
That's a good question. Maybe in the novels. I have to think about that one with, there's like a sequel to... No, they would have been known because this is a sequel to Dalek Invasion of Earth. Those are the main ones.
I think it's a good, what did you think of Metaltron as a name? It's very Van Stetten.
Yeah, exactly. I love how bad it is. It's like, this is like the worst thing you could think of, and yet it was like, oh, everyone's like, yes man and nodding along. Yep, great. We'll call it the Metaltron. Like, sort of the power of the CEO moments.
It sounds better in an American accent, Metaltron. I've been watching too much Tron.
Yeah. What was the other thing that was the Metaltron? Or did I make the same joke about Galvatron and Megatron? It just sounds like it's one of those. It's just a transformer or something. Yeah.
So in the creation of this, they almost didn't get the rights to use the Dalek from Terry Nation's estate. Ironically, because they felt that the Dalek had been so overused, Daleks had been so overused, so over-merchandised. And you got to think they were worn around by the fact that they were like, but we've never seen just one, So, and that's why they finally gave their blessing to it. But this was almost going to be the Toclafane. It was going to be kids inside machines in a Dalek-esque way that just destroy stuff. Which is interesting alternate history, but I'm so glad that the Nation estate gave in.
Yeah, I remember hearing about the war, like basically the negotiations broke down, and so there were issues. Like basically, both sides came out, or at least the BBC came out and said, "Yeah, we're not going to use them because we couldn't make a deal." Clearly, that was some kind of negotiating tactic that worked, and they made the deal. And I don't think the terms of it have ever been really revealed. I think there was a rumor once that they had to include the Daleks every season, but I think Moffat kind of denied that at one point, although they kind of have been in every season if you kind of look back, even though some of those in the Matt Smith days were kind of cameos.
Yeah.
here
Well,
and there.
that would certainly explain the power of the Doctor and how they're kind of underused in that, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad they worked it out. I'm glad, I remember hearing about it like, oh, that's going to kind of suck. I mean, you kind of want the Daleks. I mean,
mm,
Doctor Who without the Daleks is diminished,
totally.
it just is. And the thing is, the Daleks without Doctor Who are nothing.
Yes.
Like that's the thing. I mean, they're totally worthless outside of Doctor Who. I don't know who are you going to make a deal with? Like I know
sure.
in the 60s there was this fantasy that they could have like Dalek standalone movies and they would be a standalone franchise, which it never came to be. There's been a lot written about this in Doctor Who magazine, but just thinking about that, I mean, like how would that even work? And I know there are exceptions to this rule of like the villains coming out and being their own thing, like Venom, for example, in Spider-Man comics is now its own franchise. But I would still argue I don't think Venom works super great outside of Spider-Man universe. I mean, the box office notwithstanding.
You need good versus bad. You need Superman and Zod. Or Superman and Luthor. Right, is probably a better example. Every hero needs his opposite, and the Doctor and the Daleks, they just have such history and such, they are so opposite in so many ways. They absolutely work better together. That said, I did love the Dalek comic strip from the 60s and 70s that was just them, the Emperor Dalek and all of that.
Well, they've done
really
Dalek Empire stuff too in Big Finish. So, all that's all kind of notwithstanding. And I agree. I'm sure some of that stuff is great. I haven't listened to it. But to your point, it's just better. It's not its full self if it's not played as an antagonist to the Doctor. And you can certainly overplay that. And I would argue themes and stuff from this episode in this episode where they're fresh and done perfectly well are amazing, but they did end up playing this song again and again of the Doctor and the Daleks, the Time War, mutual hatred, to probably diminishing success the more they did it throughout the new series, right? And there are exceptions, but I don't know if it ever really rises to this level of quality that we see here in Dalek.
Yeah, speaking of Big Finish, we did mention that this is based on Rob Shearman's episode, Big Finish story Jubilee, which is, I'm going to give Big Finish a plug here because it's just $2.99, $2.99 on Big Finish today. Go give it a listen; it's amazing. It is one of the best intros that I've ever heard to cold opens, as it were. To almost any Doctor Who story, because it features a sort of a fake Doctor Who movie trailer from within this England Empire world, and you just sort of get to the end of it, and it's like, you will be told which cinema to go see this in. Attendance is compulsory. All hail the great English Empire. And that's the cold open, smash cut into the theme tune. So it's worth it just for that. It's worth it for Rob Shearman's writing. I will also say a few more things about Rob Shearman's writing. The more you dig into his stuff, he likes to write dark content about Nazis, specifically. Which, of course, we all know Daleks are basically just metal Nazis. And here's what Wikipedia says about his controversial early play called Easy Laughter. You think it's a Christmas comedy, but eventually reveals itself to be set in an alternate history where the season celebrates not only the birth of Jesus, but the successful extermination of the Jewish race. And you're like, oh my God, like I get shivers from just kind of hearing that description. It was an award-nominated short story that was about a disillusioned marriage, and this guy in a marriage that's going bad, but also a guy who goes to hell and falls in love with the talking ghost of Hitler's pet dog, Hitler's childhood pet dog. Like, whoa, what?
Kind of glad that one wasn't adapted into an episode.
Yeah, that's when Doctor Who runs out of ideas, when they adapt the talking ghost of Hitler's childhood pet dog.
Let's kill Hitler's dog.
Hitler's childhood pet dog. Not even the cute German Shepherd. So I like that he's got his themes. I like that he likes exploring the darkness and humanity, and that's really where Dalek came from. Like, he fully understands that the Daleks are the worst of us.
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
Well, because
But
again, like what they bring out in us and our heroes is definitely interesting though that he's got that history. If he might be the go-to guy for dystopian dictator futures. So I wouldn't mind seeing what he might do outside of a Dalek episode.
And speaking of controversial, like Rose basically euthanizes the Dalek here. I've got a little note here. Rose, quote, Dr. Kevorkian, unquote, Tyler. Like, is that, could you headcanon this to be something to do with Bad Wolf? That because what she appears to be doing here, obviously we know this isn't the case, but she's like actually allowing the Dalek to commit self-genocide if it's the last of its race. So,
yeah, she is. This is actually, you're kind of jumping ahead to me for me, because this is actually what I wrote down is what if the evil plot had succeeded? Because the evil plot, to me, is there really kind of isn't one, in that the Dalek hates its mutated self and must commit suicide according to its own sort of philosophy. And the only way it might not do that is if Rose refuses to give it orders, because in its twisted brain, it feels like it needs an order. Which again, that's a clever script twist, because it actually gets us to hear the Dalek scream "obey," which is another their second most popular catchphrase. So we get that too here, which is nice. But then if it doesn't do that and survives, what does it become? Is it then? And I think that question's answered eventually, right? Like it dies here, but you get versions of that answer in Dalek Sec. You get versions of that answer in Rusty from the Into the Dalek, and even that Dalek we just saw in Power of the Doctor, who was all like, "Hey, our race should be destroyed," and he had weird sort of reasoning about like, "Well, we were supposed to preserve the Khaled race, but they're gone."
Right,
So
yeah, which is wonderful logic, and I don't think I've heard that logic from a Dalek before. Like that's kind of he's got to be blowing some Dalek minds with that philosophy. But also, it's calling forward. I saw a foreshadowing of Which Is Familiar here. Specifically, like the Dalek just wants to see the sun before it dies. Like it opens its casing, it sees the sunlight, which is what Davros says. You know, when he's supposedly dying, gets a bit of regeneration energy from the Doctor because he just wants to live to see one more sunrise. And of course, that's all a plot. So I actually, rewatching this, couldn't remember how Dalek ended. I so I kind of assumed that it was that too was a ploy. Right? That it was just sort of like pretending to want to see the sunrise. I think because I did have sort of PTSD from The Witch Is Familiar, of that moment of like, don't do it, don't let it see the sunshine, because I couldn't remember there was like one more twist. But I wonder if Stephen Moffat in Witch Is Familiar was playing with our expectations from watching Dalek.
Well, I gotta say, this episode again coming so early, and because everyone is at 10 or above, you really believe everything. And in other words, I think in terms of subverting expectations, this was the episode to do it, and I believe it sort of successfully does that in an earlier scene where they actually convince you Rose has been killed. Not entirely, but it's like the series is so new. And Eccleston sells it so well, like you're kind of in the back of your head. Did they really just kill her? Like, you know, even though you're kind of pretty sure they didn't, because all you heard was the gun and you didn't see anything. And of course, it's revealed a moment later it isn't.
That it can't, But Eccleston has that wonderful scene of like he has to measure his trauma over the Daleks, over his love for Rose. And that is such a dramatically tense moment.
Oh, it's beautiful. And he gets, you know, like, again, so emotional, so believably just wrecked. And he rips into Van Staten there and does a perfect dressing down of him as like, you know, I wanted to touch the stars. No, you just want to bury them underground and label them. But he does it in such a way that is like, he doesn't say it like I just said it, like very deadpan. He's just screaming at the guy. And then he just, for a second later, he's just sort of remembering how young Rose is and how how much she was just this innocent person that meant so much to him. And of course, she's
Mm.
okay.
Yes. By the way, one my favorite Rose line in this is it's almost Moffat-y, this moment where the Doctor and Van Staten are kind of going at each other, and she just says, "Blimey, you can smell the testosterone in this room."
Yeah, that was a little bit of a like predictable line at that point. I just felt
Yeah.
like it's like okay, because of the
I liked
Doctor's
it,
honestly, it was okay, but it was just like the Doctor's just responding to the guy like. Is he like I don't know. I didn't get a lot from him. Van Staten certainly. But anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the Doctor has more of an edge, like we were talking about the Louis XIV thing. It does. He's kind of an undercurrent that he does kind of talk to people, kind of muscle in on his action, especially if they're all getting all masculine and up in his face.
That's true. I mean, he is a man at this point, and so.
Yeah,
it is.
He had to regenerate a few more times to find out what it was like without so much testosterone. Anyway, is it time? I think we've sort of kind of exhausted all of our love for the show, but what do you got?
I had one more thing to key in on, which was kind of I'm going to get into Uber fan corner here.
Sweet.
But I recall sort of feelings from seeing this the first time, and there's something that I think they didn't that I think this sort of implies that they ended up not doing that I was a little disappointed by. So I'll explain what that is. It's the line where he says it must have fallen through time, the only survivor. And I remember even while I was watching it the first time, well, why couldn't it just be a Dalek prior to the Time War? Like this sort of linear time perspective that Doctor Who just kind of defaults to kind of makes sense from a storytelling perspective, but this should be a thing that is more done and talked about in the show. I think like timelines getting messed up, like in certainly the River stuff with being in reverse is a good example of that, of the sort of taking advantage of time travel. But
I think that sort of only doesn't work if you've seen Day of the Doctor, right? And you know how the Doctor thinks he destroyed all the Daleks. But I feel like at the time there was the sense that the Time War had wiped out the Daleks as if they had never existed.
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at, and I like that. I actually really like that idea that the Daleks aren't just destroyed; they've been erased from history. Yeah. Like that's cool. And I don't think, but then that never, that's not what they did, so I kind of wish they would do a storyline like that where, and they probably have, and I'm just not thinking of it, but it is like, not just a story, like a storyline where some entire race is, or sequence of events is erased from history and they sort of have to fix time in some way. I think that could make a pretty good sort of season-long plot.
Totally.
But
totally.
So
RTD, call us once again.
But again, this script is fine. It's a total tour de force. I feel like there's some untapped potential there that got my sort of headcanon going that was then sort of diminished later. But yeah, potential to be tapped.
All right. Indeed, as there is in the best of Doctor Who. And speaking of the best of Doctor Who, is it time, Pete? Is it time for the 4 questions?
It is time now for the 4 questions to Doomsday.
Dun, dun, dun.
It was an actual sound effect I put in.
I know, yeah. I just like to add my own afterwards. Like we now know to pause for the audio sting. But like I like to add my own sting.
All right. Question 1. Why did the randomizer take us here? You want to take this first?
Sure. And I've got a really nerdy one that you may not realize, because I watched the Doctor Who Confidential episode last night that goes along with Dalek, narrated by Simon Pegg. And it has in it Peter Davison, Colin Baker, and Sylvester McCoy.
Nice.
The Guardians of the Edge. Like we didn't talk about this in The Power of the Doctor, but like that's,
we'd be here all day, man.
Yeah, right. But like that's where my brain immediately went. Yeah. I also felt that the randomizer clearly has one eye on, current Who. That's why it took us to Runaway Bride, right, with the Doctor and Donna. I feel like a power of the Doctor would have whetted the randomizer's appetite for Daleks. We've talked about like that philosophy of the Khalids are no more, therefore Daleks need to destroy themselves. Right. Kind of has potential to change everything about the Daleks' existence in Doctor Who. But it was sold short, like it just that was not explored, that was pushed to one side, turned out to be a complete distraction. We also asked after The Runaway Bride, was that the first time that NuWho got a bit genocide-y? Well, asked and answered. Asked and answered, randomizer.
Yeah, no, totally. I definitely had that a similar connection to The Runaway Bride. So the pivotal moment in The Runaway Bride, one of them anyway, is when Donna says you could stop now. And it's one of these moments in NuWho, for early NuWho, where it shows why the Doctor needs companions, but also that he needs to be reeled back in from his sort of Time War Doctor type self. And that is 100% Dalek. Like with Rose at the end, it's not the one pointing the gun at me. What are you changing into, Doctor? Like such resonance there, right? And it just feels so important to both the show and what the show's trying to say. Like that to me is the clear bridge here that the randomizer's making.
Totally. It's the first sort of lonely god moment that we get for the Doctor, first oncoming storm. First time we really see what we thought and what everyone thought at the time was the War Doctor. You know, we all assumed that Eccleston...
Even Moffat thought that.
Yeah, because, you know, John Hurt was only a last-minute invention because we couldn't get Eccleston. We're kind of glad that happened. Obviously, it really turned into a home run. But yeah, that's like, you could totally believe that this was the Doctor who went through the Time War. Good job, randomizer.
One other connection I'll just say is that coming so soon after we've seen Power of the Doctor, this is a good reminder that throwing everything, including the kitchen sink, at an episode does not necessarily make it good, right? I mean, this is so epic, and it is so sort of small and tight by comparison in terms of a production. But man, holy cow, does this send massive shockwaves. It is like,
totally. It's how you do NuWho on an old Who budget.
Yeah.
Right? Single location, minimal number of characters, only one Dalek. A lot of CGI, and yes, that wasn't available to old Who, but still, like, the budget on this one would not have been huge.
No, especially in Series 1.
Yeah.
When it was still proving itself. Yeah.
And you could just throw in other stuff. Like, we haven't even talked about the Cybermen head. Cybermen head at the beginning there. You know, the Slitheen arm. Like, you know, a bunch of stuff that just sort of, like, it's nice callbacks. It's you might call it fan service, but it's not really.
Don't forget the Davros reference. It's such a clever reference.
Your creator, was it? Your creator would be very...
he's talking to like he goes to Van Staten and says, who created them? And he's like, a small a tin pot dictator, you know, the boss of his own little world. You'd like him,
right?
Yeah.
You'd love it. Yeah. Well, that's sort of a good segue into question 2.
Yes. What if the evil plot had succeeded? And I've already said mine, that the Dalek is denied being being able to commit suicide, and therefore kind of becomes this self-hating Dalek that might have ramifications to the universe in the same way, say, Rusty did, in terms of going out and trying to kill as many Daleks as possible. Yeah.
My response to this is, first, the question is the evil plot Van Staten's plot or the Daleks' plot?
Yeah. So
if it's so if it's Van Staten, then maybe the plot means he succeeds in actually killing the Dalek. Like, he drills. We know from the novelization, the drill has actually finally touched flesh. Like, that's part of the terrifying thing of this. Like, they were on the edge of killing this Dalek.
So maybe it took a while to get through the polycarbide armor.
Yes. Or maybe it's something more terrifying. Maybe Van Staten uses this to sort of establish a global dictatorship, to reference Jubilee, right? You could just use one Dalek as your nuclear weapon, especially as he's already like picking presidents, like he's already got that level of power. What would having one Dalek in his corner do for him?
So it basically, you're suspecting he gets in to the casing, figures out enough about the Dalek and how to manipulate it, or force it to do his bidding. Like basically get some kind of device in there that he could kill the Dalek anytime, so he has to do whatever he says. Interesting.
Yeah,
I like that.
If he's prepped for it, he could give the Dalek just enough energy. Or like it could be a kill switch, right? You could just flip it on, like, okay, got Dalek, now you can exterminate the people that I put in this room. You know, flip it off. I'm walking back in. Let's have a conversation.
Yeah, I'd love to see a scene where Vad Staten it echoes the first scene in Genesis of the Daleks, where he's giving it voice control. You know, stop, turn right. You know, now.
Yeah,
exterminate.
I mean, obviously, like we know from Genesis of the Daleks, many other Dalek stories, that doesn't work out very well. They will turn on you eventually, especially if you try to produce more. But if he was smart enough, he'd just keep it to the one, and that's his kind of nuke. And speaking of nukes, I think that if the Daleks' evil plot had succeeded, you know, assume it does get out, assume it does sort of start trying to attack Salt Lake City, which it's probably a long way to Salt Lake City, man. Like it would just kind of maybe break down on the road.
It could fly.
Maybe it runs into Lake Silencio, to make another Doctor Who Utah reference.
That is another thing. What's the obsession with Utah?
What the hell?
Other states. Where's
it's tried to showrunners as well. Like, is there just sort of an underlying Mormon theme to Doctor Who? What's going on here? Doctor does have.
I love it.
He does have multiple wives. I'll just say that. But yeah, it could it does raise this interesting question of like, could one Dalek destroy every human on Earth?
Yeah.
Like, surely, if you at some point you just nuke it. At some point, it would be an Independence Day scenario, and you'd just be like, you know, sorry, Salt Lake City, we have to throw a nuke at it.
I mean, it's Doctor Who. How could you be sure? You know, like, and if it's a nuke, it just blows up and you just assume it's dead, but that never works in the show. You know, it just never does. You know, to have a force field and maybe it's buried.
Well, again, that would be a great sort of Independence Day style scene where like the smoke clears and the Dalek is still standing there.
Yeah, totally. So yeah, I think it totally could. You need the Doctor. You need some X factor to stop the Daleks. Can't just have Unit do it.
Well, and that brings me to the question 3. My answer to question 3, which is,
where's the Clara splinter? Because as we know, Clara Oswald was fragmented at the end of the Time of the Doctor, throughout the Doctor's time stream.
Name of the Doctor, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, one of those. What was it? Name of the Time of the Doctor was the next one.
It was the final one.
Name of the Doctor. Yeah. Sorry. They were all named of the Doctor in that. It's hard to keep them straight.
Especially now we've got Power of the Doctor. We've got too many of the Doctors now.
I know. At least that one's a whole different era. But yes, of course. Clara, where is she here?
So my theory is that she's not in the bunker at all. She's waiting outside the bunker. She either has a nuclear device or a crack unit team, or some way of filling the bunker with concrete, which is what eventually happens anyway. Like she's got the concrete trucks ready to roll.
Maybe she's the owner of the concrete company. And she's ready there. She's like, we've got all these trucks.
Yeah.
They're all just and basically they're like, we got to get those out to orders. No. I think we're going to get a big order. Real soon.
Yeah. Trust me.
Yeah.
Like, why are we driving into the middle of the Utah desert, boss? Oh, just trust me. Bring all the concrete mixers. That's what I said. Bring them all. Wait for a hole to open in the ground here, then pour in the concrete.
There it is. Perfect. I didn't have much better, but they do mention that the Dalek crashed in the Ascension Islands, which I didn't actually look up until now. Those are in Canada, if you can believe it.
Oh,
so it's a Nunavut. So that actually sells the idea that this is a remote area.
Yeah.
I don't know how anyone would have even noticed, honestly, unless it was some Inuit folks. Just okay.
Yeah.
doing fishing or whatever. But
It's like
so
Dalek would be very good at fishing. I mean, that's with that sucker. My goodness.
but then it's also sold at auction and passed from private owner to private owner, I guess. So maybe she was
Yeah.
sort of the broker or the auctioneer and was manipulating how the Dalek was transferred, ensuring that it would get here right when
Interesting.
the Doctor arrived.
Yes, and maybe sort of made sure that the Doctor heard the distress signal, because does the distress signal
Oh,
come
that's
from the Dalek
right.
itself? In the novelization, the Doctor goes straight to the source of the signal, which is like a set of doors. That the Dalek, we know the Dalek is behind, so it's actually responding to the Dalek's distress signal. But I don't think in the show it's ever explained.
No, it's just I think there's a strong implication it was the Dalek. Yeah, he did. No, he does say it. He does say it when he's in the prison, where he's like, "Oh, and I got your little signal. Help me, poor little thing." Yeah, so I think it was definitely the Dalek.
Maybe Clara's boosting that signal, because how the hell else is it going to reach the TARDIS?
Could be. Yeah. So a lot of
Yeah.
possibilities here in this tight episode for Clara, even though there's not much in the way of plot oversights to fill in. So
Indeed.
Cool.
All right, and the final question.
The final question, the only question for Dalek: is this a Dalek, which is the rating we give for a good episode of Doctor Who? Is it an Ogron, which is a perhaps not so great episode of Doctor Who? We have our new rating in Professor Hater, where it's not a good episode of Doctor Who, but at least I learned something. And there is the Viscount banger, what we reserve for the ultimate episodes of Doctor Who, the best of the best. And I gotta say, as ironic as it is, we're not giving Dalek a Dalek. This one's by far a Viscount banger, like all the way.
Yeah, I kind of am. I'm going to do both, because I'm going to say this is Viscount banger, but he's got a Dalek.
Obey!
Obey!
A single rating. Obey!
You must choose. No, I'm going to say that Viscount Banger has actually had a Dalek locked up in his castle in the basement for all these years, chained up. He thinks it's a Metaltron, or Sir Metaltron, as I'm sure Viscount Banger calls it. But
that's why we love it.
That's how much of a Viscount Banger it is. It's a Viscount Banger with a Dalek in his castle.
Wow, it's a Russian doll Viscount Banger Dalek thing. You just keep just more and more and more. Every time you peel back a layer, there's another one that's just as good and satisfying. That's how good this episode is. To make
another Power of the Doctor reference, it's a Russian nesting doll kind of situation here.
I mean, we've talked all about the drama and all the amazing performances, the design of the Dalek, everything they did right. On top of that all, they also worked in hairdryer. Like, it's so good. This episode is so good. Oh my God.
It's so good. And here's my question for you. Maybe this is the fifth question to Doomsday. Is this, so when we did Genesis of the Daleks, I don't believe we had the Viscount Banger rating system. Is that correct?
Can't remember, but yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
It was a while back.
So the question is,
we did State of Decay after that, I believe. Yeah.
This may be heresy to even say it, and I'm ready for a collective gasp from the classic Who audience. Is this better than Genesis of the Daleks? Now we've seen them both.
They're so different, you know.
Yeah, they really are.
I mean, one's drawn out, is trying to say a lot. It's more allegory than anything else. It's hard to make that call, I think I go back to Dalek more often, but that's probably just because it's shorter.
Yes.
It's easier to get through.
Yeah, we often forget that Genesis is a 6-parter. Maybe if Genesis was a 4-parter, like, it would have been a lot tighter. You'd remove a lot of that stuff, like the clams and, the stuff that you don't remember until you rewatch it. Sarah Jane's unexplained costume change, all of that stuff. I think, on balance, this might be the best Dalek story ever.
Agree. Yeah, I think I have to give it, just because, like you said, it's not just a masterclass in good Doctor Who and how to write that for the Daleks. It's a masterclass in good TV. Like, this is great frickin' television. Trying to keep it family friendly. It just is like, this is like a tight episode that I would be very comfortable asking anyone to watch. Like literally, like, okay, you're gonna watch one episode of Doctor Who, watch this one. Like some stuff's gonna go over your head, just as any franchise would. But this, you're gonna get it, and you're gonna be riveted.
Yeah, if you have a friend who's sort of a non-fan, or maybe they used to be a fan, or they saw a few episodes ages ago, but they sneer about the Daleks in particular. Like, oh, they're just, you know, pepper pots, they can't climb stairs, you know, what is even with that eye stalk, blah, blah, blah. Show them this, they will not be saying that again.
Agreed. Yeah, man. This is it. All right. Best Dalek episode ever.
Yeah, you heard it here first, folks. Come at us with your takes, with your hot takes. Come at us with your explain. But yeah, we think this is better than Genesis overall.
I gotta say, we deserve a medal for not doing the Dalek voices until the last 5 or 10 minutes of this podcast.
Oh, I sort of assumed you were going to Nicholas Briggs us throughout the thing, and we'll actually do the whole podcast in Dalek voices.
Yeah, I only mentioned him once, but man, he's such a pivotal part of this. And
yeah, you kind of see him in the Doctor Who Confidential episode. You see him talking like this, and for viewers who are not watching me, I'm slamming my finger down with each word, and that's how he did it, because he had to signal the guy who was operating the lights on the Dalek, the remote control, so they get more synchronized than ever.
Super high tech.
Yeah. Love it.
It's funny, like, dude, when you get behind the scenes of TV, you realize just how seat of the pants it is a lot of the time. But they were all clearly, like, you know, giving it their all here and doing whatever it took to make this awesome. Okay,
Indeed.
we could go on and on, but we must go on to our next episode. So we're gonna have to close the door on Dalek, close this casing, and then rush into our time machine and find out where the randomizer is going to take us next.
Indeed. And we are going to step inside our mysterious police box, and while Adam stands outside it and says, "Hey, what are you guys doing in there?" But we beckon you to join us because it's time to fire up the randomizer, and there are two parts of the randomizer. Pete has the Codex, which is our listing of all of the stories in Doctor Who history. Pete, I've got to ask you, have you added story number 302?
302 added because one of our followers on Twitter reminded me, and I was very flattered and humbled to learn that follower is actually using our Codex as a basis.
Oh my God!
For
people are reading our spreadsheets. That's like the highest accolade you can get in Doctor Who fandom. I looked at your spreadsheet,
and I feel a little bit shamed because we've been promising to updating it with emoji reviews and other things. So we'll get to that. That's we'll have some time in the upcoming holidays, I'm sure, at some point to make this give it an upgrade.
I feel like our casing is open to the sunlight right now. Yes, we're weeping a single frothy tear.
Gotta say, it was satisfying for the Power of the Doctor when I was putting the entry in to write which doctors it features.
Ooh,
because that's a list. That is a list, my friend. I won't go into it here. Everyone knows, but
I think that was one of the first.
Doctors.
We obviously texted each other right after watching it, and I think that was one of the first things I texted you was the 8 doctors ?
It's got 8. Yeah, this is it's got the most doctors of any of these entries. Because we only count people who are in the show, not just footage.
Yeah, we're counting speaking role, like new speaking roles.
Right.
Here, not yes, Day of the Doctor has visuals of all of them, and yes, Day of the Doctor has clips of all of them, but not new content. So yeah, this really is the 8 Doctors. All right, so the other part of the randomizer is random.org, which uses atmospheric noise rather than one of Henry Van Statten's algorithms to predict randomness, because the internet is very bad in general. Algorithms are bad in general at predicting. Giving you random numbers, so we use atmospheric noise. So it's true randomness. It's true bespoke Doctor level randomness. So
you betcha. This is the time.
I plugged in numbers 1 to 302. We're going to generate a random number, but first,
whoa, slow down. We got to do some challenges, my man. And I feel like we're running out of challenges. Now we've finally done our first Eccleston episode.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we could challenge it to go Yahtzee and give us Paul McGann, but no, I don't think that's going to happen. We could also challenge it to give us the 14th Doctor. Now, but no, we're not going to do that. I'm going to say I got so jazzed up about this. I got so jazzed up about Dalek stories in general. I want more Daleks. Like last time you said, let's give us, don't give us Tennant and Tate. Let's save Tennant and Tate. I'm going to say we're so behind on Dalek serials. Let's see one. Let's really dive into a Day of the Daleks or a Death to the Daleks or something. Actually, give me a Dalek serial I have not seen, which is quite a few.
Whoa. Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the same thing, but differently. So I'm going to also continue this obsession with Daleks, but since we've just decided that Dalek is the best Dalek episode ever, randomizer, you bring us to what you think is the worst Dalek story ever.
Ooh.
And we'll see if you're right.
I love it. What a challenge. All right. Well, Pete's going to give me a countdown. I'm going to generate a random number. He'll look it up in the Codex. We'll see where we're going next. It's super exciting. We have no idea what's about to happen.
Maximum randomness in 5 rels. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Doctor Who.
207. Explain.
207. Oh, man! No Daleks, but it's the 11th hour.
Whoa!
No. Sorry.
Oh,
Beast below. I was looking at the row.
Oh my God! Oh, we were so
close. The Beast below. Sorry, everyone. Sorry. I feel like it's the Oscars. Remember when they gave it to La La Land, and then it's like, oh no, it's Moonlight. That's exactly what happened here just now.
Except Moonlight was actually good.
Oh, you kid, La La Land. La La Land was a good time.
No. As opposed to the Beast below. I mean. It's like, oh, we're giving you this fabulous 4-course meal. No, sorry, it's a sandwich.
Well, good times. The Beast below. We kid the Beast below, I hope. But that's good. Yeah. Wow. Okay. What happened there, guys, is I was accidentally looking at the lines in the spreadsheet lines and not the actual numbers of the stories.
Right.
Which are a little off. So,
all right. Thanks, Warren Beatty.
It's all good. The Beast below. This will be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a while since we've done any Matt Smith.
Yeah.
Looking forward to returning. Looking forward to, like, we found almost all NuWho gets improved with a second viewing. So maybe I will find something to like in the Beast below.
It's fresh Matt Smith and fresh Karen Gillan. They're brand new, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed in their roles. This could be interesting. Could be a lot to like about this.
At least we'll be like, don't they look not tired?
Well, they're going to look a lot less tired than us after we've just slogged through. It wasn't a slog at all, but it takes a lot out of you, these Dalek epics. We will catch you next time. Thanks all for listening. By the way, this is Pull to Open. It's a podcast. If you weren't sure, if you're encountering us somewhere in your cosmic journeys.
Explain podcasts.
Podcasts are this thing you actually subscribe to on whatever service you're using. So please make sure you've done that, whether it's YouTube, whether it's a podcast app like the podcast app or Overcast or the Google Podcast app. You usually have the word podcast or cast in it. It's probably what you're doing.
Stitcher.
Best thing you can do, of course, is leave us a review wherever you're listening to us, or tell a friend about this great podcast you're listening to that talks about Doctor Who. Follow us on social, Pull to Open on TikTok, Pull to Open 63 on Twitter and Instagram. Drop us a line, say hi, review something. It's all good. We'd love to engage. And we will talk to you all next time about the Beast Below. See you then.
Bye, guys.